You are traveling to another train of thought, one not from this century and challenging the status quo. You are now entering the paradigm shift.
Well, good morning. This is the Paradigm Shift, and this is the Cerberus Radio Network. Welcome to another episode of the Paradigm Shift. This is Monday, January 29th, 2018, and we are live. We also are live on YouTube, and this morning, at least through the first break, we will be live on Facebook, doing Facebook Live. That way, people that haven't found us on YouTube, you can find us at Cerberus Radio Network. We have probably 120 episodes out there between the Bailey Report, the Renegade and Rambler Show. Bailey Report's usually on around 6 o'clock in the morning, live. The Renegade and Rambler Show is Sunday nights at 8 p.m. The Paradigm Shift, which you're watching now, is at 9 a.m. on Monday mornings live. And then immediately following this at 10 a.m. is Suzanne Sherman with the Wasatch Report. So there are live shows. And if you go to our Facebook page, you will find on our Facebook page links to radio.co. This is a radio station. I do this little bit of Facebook Live to try and promote the radio station, and do the YouTube. That is our RSS feed. If you want to find old episodes, you'll have to go to Facebook at this point. We just don't have a website set up where we have RSS feeds. So welcome to the show. I'm going to do something I haven't done in a couple weeks because I've been doing other news stories. I'm going to get back to a little bit of Patrick Henry because that's what I enjoy doing the most. I really enjoy sharing what Patrick Henry had to say. Actually, today, right now it's Patrick Henry. We did Brutus 1 for quite a few episodes. I do the Anti-Federalists and their warnings about the Constitution. And so I'm going to get back to a speech by Patrick Henry, June 5th, 1788. Where we left off. I'm going to read the last sentence where we left off. The next paragraph, he's going to pick right up again with this whole notion of liberty. In the last sentence of the previous paragraph, which we covered about 2 weeks ago, you are not to inquire how your trade may be increased. So, today we have all these corporations that go to government to get their trade increased. That's one of the biggest problems, because what do? They go there and give money to these politicians, and these politicians write laws that benefit these corporations. Doesn't benefit us. It doesn't protect us. It just makes them richer. You're not to inquire how your trade may be increased, nor how you are to become a great and powerful people. We talk about often on this network about we have an empire. Let's face it, we have an empire, not much different than the Roman Empire, any other empire in history. So, Patrick Henry is saying, government shouldn't be there to increase your wealth. Government shouldn't be there to make us a great and powerful nation or an empire. But what is it supposed to be? And so Patrick Henry goes and says, but how your liberties can be secured. For liberty ought to be the direct end of your government. When they started all this, that was what the framers thought, that government's there to protect your liberty. What did Jefferson say in the Declaration of Independence? That we have natural rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And what was the government there to do? When it destroyed those ends, what were we supposed to do? Change or abolish it? Does this government protect our liberty today? Or is it there for the corporation to get rich, as Patrick Henry warned about? Or is it there to have a great and mighty empire, which we're in 170 nations. We have 170 nations where we have military forces. The Romans did the same thing. Look what happened to the Roman Empire. It collapsed. We're 21 trillion in debt. How much defense are we going to have in this country when the debt bomb goes off and we have no money for any sort of defense? I mean, seriously, think about this. Do we need to be all over the world, being the world's policeman, spreading whatever we're spreading all over the world at the expense of our own national or our own defense here in this union? So we're going to go on from there. So that's where we left off last time we were talking about Patrick Henry in this speech of June 5th, 1788. So let me just continue on with a little bit of Patrick Henry, because he was way more than give me liberty or give me death. And that's what only thing you'll ever hear at school is give me liberty, give me death. I showed you this the very first day I started this new speech. It is 8 printed pages today on type print. Let's see if we can see it here. You can see how close the lines are together. It's 8 pages. This was one speech. He stood up in front of this assembly that was debating the Constitution, and he gave the speech that's 8 type pages long. And they sat there and listened because it was a great speech, and he was the great orator. Having premised these things, I shall, with the aid of my judgment and information, which I confess are not extensive, go into the discussion of this system more minutely. Is it necessary for your liberty, that you should abandon those great rights by the adoption of this system? Now, what system is he talking about? He's talking about the Constitution. He was very adamantly opposed. In one of his speeches, he said, if it is said that 12 and a half states, that 9 or 12 or whatever states it was, I can't remember the exact quote, are for the Constitution. He said if 12 and a half states were against it, I would with manly firmness oppose it. That's how he felt about this Constitution. And in his speech, he's talking about the threats this Constitution would bear towards our liberty. And was he right? Today, if you want to open a business, who do you got to go to? Got to go to government. If you want to go hunting, who do you got to go to and ask permission? You got to go to government. In a lot of states, if you want to carry a firearm concealed, who do you got to go to? Government. You starting to feel free? Are your liberties protected by government? All right. Let's go back to this one. Is the relinquishment of trial by jury and the liberty of the press necessary for your liberty? Will the abandonment of your most sacred rights tend to secure your liberty? Liberty, the greatest of all earthly blessings. Give us that precious jewel, and you may take everything else. He'd give up everything else in life to protect liberty. That's what Patrick Henry thought of liberty. And that's what government, and per his statement earlier, that's what the direct end of government should be, the defense of our liberties. It's not there to give money to welfare people. It's not there to be the world policeman and bomb other countries into submission. It's not there to take billions of dollars from the American people to give to other countries. It's there to protect our liberties. And welcome, everyone. It's about 10 after, so I'll let you know where we're at. This is the Cerberus Radio Network. You're listening to The Paradigm Shift. Welcome. The Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. I know there's quite a few new people watching and listening on Facebook Live. Welcome. At the first break, about 20 after, Facebook Live will end. If you want to continue to watch, you can go to our YouTube channel. Go to Facebook. Look for Cerberus Radio Network. And the very first things you're going to find are our YouTube links and our radio co-links. We are a radio station, and we do broadcast 24 hours a day on radio.co. If you look there, you'll find our radio co-link for regular high-quality streaming. And then there is a low data use one. If you're on a short data link or data usage link, we have that link for you. It'll use about half the bandwidth, so it'll significantly reduce the amount of data you use. So welcome. We are glad you're watching. We're glad you're listening, and could watch and listen after the show on YouTube or on Radio Co, because you'll be really enjoy Suzanne Sherman with the Wasatch Report immediately following. She talks everything from prepping to politics, and she is the premier show on this network. Just trust me, she's going to argue that she's not, but she is. And she's listening right now. I know she is because she's in our virtual studio with me right now. So anyway, back to Patrick Henry. That's what we're reading. For those of you that just joined, and no, Suzanne, I'm not going to stop it. All right. And he's saying that liberty, give us that precious jewel, and you may take everything else. But I am fearful that I have lived long enough to become an old-fashioned fellow. Perhaps an invincible attachment to the dearest rights of man may, in these refined and enlightened days, be deemed old-fashioned. If so, I am contented to be so. I say that the time has been when every pulse of my heart beat for American liberty, and which I believe had a counterpart in the breast of every true American. But suspicions have gone forth, suspicions of my integrity, publicly reported that my professions are not real. 23 years ago, my country, 23 years ago, was I supposed to be a traitor to my country? Was I then to be the bane of sedition because I supported the rights of my country? I want to stop right there for just 1 second. Twice there, he said, my country. And here's an important principle about what Patrick Henry was talking about. In the day, the Federalists, those that were actually, who were indeed, let's be honest about this, too. The Federalists were nationalists. Madison and Hamilton, who put forth this Constitution, who, when they went to the Philadelphia Convention to amend the Articles of Confederation, they brought this whole new system up. Every time that they brought it up, they wanted a national government that had a veto over the states. And every time that was brought up at the Philadelphia Convention, it was voted down. I mean, it wasn't even a close vote. It was voted down. So when Patrick Henry is talking about 23 years ago, and this is 1788 that Patrick Henry is giving this speech, 23 years prior, that would make it 1765. What country was he talking about? Because at that point, there wasn't a country of the United States as today it's put forth. So what country is he talking about? He was talking about Virginia. If you talk to Governor George Clinton of New York, if you talk to Robert Yates from New York, if you talk to Henry today, or if you talk to Mason or any of these other so-called anti-federalists, they would say that their country was the state they live in. What is a state? Let's go back to the historic terms here. A state is a country. Today, people often say the state of Israel. Why do they call it the state of Israel? Is it part of the United States? Some people say that it is. I mean, we send them billions of dollars. So if it is indeed the state is a state, just a mere county of this government, which, after the Civil War, that's kind of the way it's gone. But Henry didn't see it that way. The state was a country. And so when this was ratified, and if you look at the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, when Jefferson and Madison wrote those in response to the Alien Sedition Acts, what was their statement there? That the states were the final authority, that it was a compact. You read Resolve 1 of the Kentucky Resolution. Look that up. Just read Resolve 1. You will see there that this state was the final arbiter of what was constitutional. Not let's get serious about this. The 9 politically connected lawyers in black robes that sit on in a big bench in a temple to this government in Washington, D.C., called the Supreme Court, they are not the final arbiters of what's constitutional. This is a creation of the courts over the last 200 years. Read Jefferson, read Madison. Madison wrote the Virginia resolutions. and Thomas Jefferson wrote the Kentucky resolutions. In response to the Alien Sedition Acts. So in 1798, they wrote these. They were the Kentucky resolutions were passed through in Kentucky, and the Virginia ones were passed in Virginia. What did they say? In Resolve 1, Jefferson says, a guy that should know what the whole thing was set up to be, are the final arbiter. Because what are they? They're the countries. And he says right in that resolve that there was a compact between the states. What's a compact? Today we call them contracts. So the states entered into a contract with one another to have a general government to protect what's Henry's statement that what's the primary goal of government? To defend liberty. So they compacted together. They entered into a contract. It passed. We live under the Constitution. We don't live under the Articles of Confederation any longer. We live under the Constitution. So the Federalists, who were the Nationalists, and the Anti-Federalists, who were actually the Federalists, who weren't against this Constitution, because they said that it was going to become a consolidated government. That's exactly what he said in the first paragraph, which we read a couple weeks ago. That he was warning this would become a consolidated government, and it would kill the states. And other speeches that we can get into, and Brutus I, which we read a few months ago, we went through that for I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks. We went through Brutus I, another anti-federalist. Probably, I'm pretty sure that was Robert Yates. So anyway, they warned that it would become a consolidated government. It would destroy the sovereignty of the states. And has that happened? What do we live under today? Are the states the final or arbiters? Are the states sovereign over the general government in Washington, D.C.? No, they've been relegated to mere counties of the general government. All right. It's almost 20 after. Again, this is the Cerberus Radio Network, defending liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. This is the Paradigm Shift. Immediately following after this will be the Wasatch Report. We have a number of shows. We are on YouTube. In a few minutes, this Facebook Live is going to end. And so you can find us at YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find all our episodes. There's probably 120 episodes. Again, you got the Bailey Report, which is live. It's about 6 in the morning. You got this show at 9 on Mondays. You got Suzanne at 10 with the Wasatch Report. We have great podcasts out there. We have Mike Meharry from the 10th Amendment Center. He has 2 hours from 11 to 1. At 1 o'clock, our good friend Sean Hoffine with the Brushfires of Freedom is on, and his show is about 47 minutes because he is on terrestrial radio. And so immediately following his, every day, Monday through Saturday, the last 15 minutes is from Peter Schiff Gold, the Friday Gold Wrap-Up. So if you're looking for some economic news, at about 1:45, that comes on. In the evenings, it's not on yet. I haven't gotten the podcast yet, but eventually I think you'll see at 9 p.m. you're going to start seeing the other side with two high school teachers, Justin and Mike, out of Indiana. So we truly are all over. We have people from all over. Suzanne's in Utah. We're going to have these guys from Indiana. Sean's from Arizona. So we have lots of radio shows on Radio Co. So if you go to our Facebook page, you can find the links to YouTube. You can find the links to Radio Co. And there are shows 24 hours a day on our radio station. All right. Thank you, folks, for watching on Facebook Live. If you want to continue watching the show, again, go to our YouTube. Again, you can find those on Facebook. We are the Cerberus Radio Network. Thank you for watching on Facebook Live, and go find us. We are broadcasting right now on the radio, on radio.co, and on YouTube. I'm going to go to our break. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. All right. I'm going to go to a break. As everyone on YouTube and everyone listening on Radio Co. The Facebook people are gone. We had, oh my goodness, we had that's more people watching videos than I've had ever. It was a great crowd in there. I might next time just run the entire show once I find out what my data used to watch, because it is a big issue. I can't run that through my Wi-Fi and the YouTube and Radio Co. It just overwhelms my Wi-Fi. So I was doing that on my data from my phone. So we'll see what that used. Maybe I'll start doing the entire show on Facebook Live. Holy cow, you just can't believe the number of people that watched it during that 20 minutes. All right, let me do this break, and we'll reset. We'll come back right after the break, and I have some other news to go through. This is the Cerberus Radio Network, defending liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. Whoops. Well, let's try this one.
Jeff Johnson, transporting 18th century ideas to our 21st century minds. The Paradigm Shift, every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Cerberus Radio Network.
Congressman Paul, are these two men in the middle insufficiently conservative for you?
Well, I think that the problem is nobody's to define what being conservative means. And I think that is our problem. Conservatives means we have smaller government and more liberty. And yet, if you ask what have we done, I think we've lost our way completely. Our rhetoric is still pretty good. But when we get in charge, we expand the government. You talk about Dodd-Frank, but we gave Sarbanes-Oxley. We gave debts as well, when we're in charge. So if it means limited government, you have to ask a basic question: what should the role of government be? The founders asked that question, had a revolution, wrote a constitution. And they said the role of government ought to be to protect liberty. It's not to run a welfare state and not to be the policeman of the world. And so if you're going to conservative, how can you be conservative and cut food stamps, but you won't cut spending overseas? There's not a nickel or penny that anybody will cut on the conservative side overseas spending, and we don't have the money. They're willing to start more wars. So I say if you're conservative, you want small government across the board, especially in personal liberty. What's wrong with having the government out of our personal lives? So this is what we have to decide: what conservative means, what limited government means. And I have a simple suggestion. We have a pretty good guide, and if we follow the Constitution, government would be very small, and we would all be devoted conservatives.
You're going to have to put the hammer down to keep up with this trucker, Daniel Bailey, in the Bailey Report on the Cerberus Radio Network. Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
Well, welcome back to the Paradigm Shift on the Cerberus Radio Network. Man, I had a great time doing that Facebook Live segment. The people did take this up and come over to Radio Co. and start listening there, or come over to Facebook or YouTube and watch. We had a great crowd in there. I mean, really, for my show, we hit double-digit numbers, and that's huge for this show. I mean, who's Jeff Johnson? I mean, quite honestly. I mean, let's be serious. I'm a nobody. I'm just a regular old, corrections officer. I'm just Joe average man. But I do believe strongly in the principles of federalism. I mean, that's what Patrick Henry, he lived and breathed federalism, that the states are sovereign, that everything really pretty much falls on them. And there's just a few little things that were given to the general government. And that's why I'm going to go real aside here. That's why, we really upset a lot of people oftentimes on our network here when we say that you don't have a Second Amendment right. Because you don't. You have a natural right. And this is foundational here, folks. I mean, you have a natural right to self-preservation. That pre-existed this Constitution. You're not begging government to give you a right. And when you say you have a Second Amendment right, you're asking government for that right. Yes, you are. You are asking government to give you a right. If they can give it to you, they can take it away. That's why this is so important. You have it naturally because you are a human being. Don't ask for a Second Amendment right. You already had it before that. So why is it there? You got to go to the preamble. Because when the framers of the Constitution did this, people like Patrick Henry and George Mason and a whole bunch of others weren't happy that it was passed, that it was ratified. They demanded that there was further declaratory and restrictive clauses added. Why? To keep the government that was just created from misconstructing or abusing its powers. It was only given very finite powers, 18 enumerated powers. And there's only 3 laws that it can prosecute. There's not a whole book of federal law that can be prosecuted. As I said the other day on the news here, I heard them say that the Commerce Clause is how the government can prosecute a whole bunch of different things. And that's total baloney. 3 things. Piracy on the high seas, treason, and counterfeiting. 3 things. That's all that that's all the law enforcement authority that the general government was given. Everything else falls to the state or the local. It's a municipal power, as it would be called then. So that's why this is important. You're begging them for something that you already had. And when you beg them for it, they can deny it or they can regulate it. Are they regulating it? There's thousands of federal firearms laws. You want to know something? The way you want it, that gives them the authority to do it. If you want to demand a Second Amendment right, they're going to have all the authority to regulate it. If you go my direction and say that it is a restriction, an absolute restriction on the general government, that means that every single one of those laws is unconstitutional. There's not one of them that holds any value under the Constitution. Suzanne just unmuted her mic. I know she wants to jump in on this one because this one's so pivotal. We have to figure this out. If you don't figure this one out, we're doomed. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Yes. Good morning, my friend. And I've said the same thing to, my friends before, and some people just quit back. Well, it's the same difference. It doesn't make a difference if you call it a constitutional right or if you say the government's prohibited. The same effect applies, that they cannot regulate firearms. But here's the problem. The politicians themselves say rights are subject to reasonable regulations, or as otherwise known as common sense gun restrictions. And that's the problem when we call them rights. They say out of their own mouths, rights are subject to regulation. I like to quote Nancy Pelosi, you can't shout wolf in a crowded theater. According to, remember, the court actually said fire in a crowded theater. But this is the thing, they allow themselves the opportunity to regulate rights that they feel that they have divvied out to us. The difference is significant. So I'm glad that you're discussing this as well.
Right. I had no intention to go into that. It just kind of naturally flowed from where we were about defending liberty. And that's, really, when you come down to it, Patrick Henry, you can't look at that speech and say that anything else mattered to that man. He said he'd give up everything else to defend liberty. He'd give up his wealth. He'd give up everything. And that's the primary goal of government. The primary direct. If it doesn't do that, we don't. There's government for no other reason. So anyway, we're done with Patrick Henry for now. I just saw this come across my news feed not long ago. I'm going to play this one clip. Then I have a little article on it. I told you, Suzanne, when we were in our prep a little earlier, I was going to touch on some illegal alien stuff, or illegal immigrant. They are aliens, not in the extraterrestrial sense. The Patrick Henry and them would call them aliens. If they were in their state legally and they were the state allowed them to be there, they'd be alien friends. If they were there illegally, they wouldn't be alien friends. They'd be illegal aliens.
Now, the words used by the very founders themselves are now considered offensive. You can't use the word alien.
Yeah,
I do.
But that's what they are. They would be alien friends if they're there in the States. Again, read Suzanne's article. I know you'll find it on our Facebook, our Cerberus Radio Network page on immigration. It is a state issue. Naturalization, a uniform set of rules for naturalization was the general government's delegated authority. Immigration was retained by the states. So we're not going to get into that right this second. Let me play this clip. It's from Fox News. It'll be self-evident why I'm playing it. Let me make sure my board is turned on so it plays. Let me just turn it up a little bit because this is not a great recording, but I'm sure you'll be able to hear it okay. Let me just make sure everything's set. All right. That's one of the joys of producing your show, because you have to look from board to computer to computer. I have two computers going. I have to make sure everything's aligned. The stars are in alignment, and my zodiac signs. Never mind. Here we go. Listen to this.
The illegal immigrant convicted of voter fraud now crying foul, saying that it's not fair that she's being made an example of this, even after voting 5 times.
They could have did this to someone else that really did something wrong, that really did a crime against me, just to be an example. It's just not fair. It's just not fair.
It's not fair. It's just not fair, she said. Rosa Ortega is her name. She says she didn't know the difference between citizen and resident when she cast illegal ballots for a decade. A judge in Texas sentencing her to 8 years behind bars.
Cry me a Rio.
She's been voting for 10 years illegally. She's here illegally. She's broken that law. Then she's breaking our voting law. Does anyone see a problem here?
I'm
not going to get into the whole discussion. I'm not going to get into the whole discussion whether this is the federal government has any right or authority to have federal laws in this. But does anyone see a problem with the fact that she's voting? Go ahead, Suzanne.
Well, first of all, try that in Mexico. The second thing, is ignorance of the law is no excuse. Just ask Randy Weaver, who even tried to saw that shotgun off, and he knew that it was 1/4 of an inch and he was too short. But imagine if somebody like you or myself had violated some firearms law and were being prosecuted for that. Do you think we could plead ignorance of the law and how it's not fair?
No.
How do you think the media would respond?
Well, it's just funny because the other day I posted, I put a big post on my page. I posted on there that what crime can I commit and get a pass on? I mean, that's what she's looking for. She's looking for a pass. She committed a crime in breaking our immigration law. She breaking voting laws. I have an article we're going to get into in just a second from the Washington Times. So it's not a conservative. It's not a liberal. The Washington Times is kind of like one of these. Every once in a while you get good articles from them. And this one here is an interesting one. Did you have anything to add on that media file?
No, go ahead,
Suzanne. All right. This is the Washington Times. This is written by a Stephen Dinan, and this is from January 26, 2018. So it's a new article. Illegals commit crimes at double the rate of native-born study, and semicolon study. So there was a study that finds that illegals are committing twice the number of crimes as native-born. So that'd be citizens. Twice. All right. The crime rate among illegal immigrants. And okay, so this is going to be a state, one state, but I think it's going to be safe to say we have one right there. That was from Texas. The media file. This is from Arizona. Illegal immigrants in Arizona is twice that of other residents. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said Friday, citing a new report based on conviction data. The report from the Crime Prevention Research Center used a previously untapped set of data from Arizona that detailed criminal convictions and found that illegal immigrants between 15 and 35 are less than 3% of the state's population, but nearly 8% of its prison population. And the crimes they were convicted were, on the whole, more serious, said John R. Lott Jr., the report's author and president of the research center. The finding also challenged the general narrative that immigrants commit fewer crimes. Those past studies usually don't look at legal versus illegal populations, Mr. Lott said. Mr. Lott said the Arizona data is able to peek behind the curtain, and the differences between the populations are stark. So we have, it does. Kate Steinle, a guy that was deported numerous times. This guy got a pass on killing her because of Suzanne discussed on our show at length. Go back and find that show. I mean, it was the prosecutor he was making a political statement by the way he charged him, and he was given a pass for killing her. You just look at go on there and Google anything, illegal immigrants, drunk driving deaths, and look at the numbers. Illegal immigrants murders, just look at the stories that come up. You can't, I had one, I can't even remember where, I know it was California. This guy went in and murdered an illegal immigrant, illegal alien that murdered a lady in her house with a hammer. You can't go and do a search and not find these stories. They're out there. So in Arizona, so it's just one state, but you're going to be able to, you can extrapolate from that one state that it's not going to be that entirely different when you go to other states. I can tell you right now that those numbers are probably pretty close in the state where I am a corrections officer. Just from my own personal observation. And for the most part, those ones in your state are in for violent crimes. I know I could tell you all kinds of stories. I mean, it boggles the mind. So, if they're willing to break one law to come in here, why do they care about any of our laws? And they don't. Just the case here with the voting fraud. You like I said, do a search. It's incredible. I have friends. I have a family friend from my childhood. One of their kids is a victim of this whole thing. So, all right, it's 20 of the hour. We have about 15 minutes left before Suzanne's on. I'm going to go to a break, kind of reset. I'm going to come back. I have a couple last stories to go through. This is the Cerberus Radio Network, defending liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
You won't disappear when you wear Tail Gunner Apparel custom camo clothing and all natural bath and body products for women and men too. And don't forget to ask about their line of custom home products and bed scarves. Look awesome and feel even better. Tail Gunner Apparel on Facebook at Tail Gunner Apparel and at tailgunnerapparel.etsy.com. That's tailgunnerapparel.etsy.com.
Camouflage ain't nothing doesn't go with camouflage. You can't blend in the country. You can't stand out in the fashion world.
Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
To the Paradigm Shift here on the Cerberus Radio Network, and we are live. This is January 29th, 2018. Welcome back from the break. We're gonna go away from the illegal alien stories. I have a story here from the Oregonian. Finicum family, forget it. You know who it is. Family files wrongful death lawsuit against BLM, FBI, Oregon State Police, and others. The family of Oregon occupation spokesman Robert Lavoie Finicum filed a wrongful death lawsuit in federal court against the United States, the FBI, Oregon State Police, the U.S. Bureau of Land Management, Oregon governor, and other on the second anniversary of his death. The complaint claims Finicum was shot assassination style by one or more militarized officers of the Oregon State Police and/or FBI as he was trying to drive across the county border to seek the protection of the Grant County Sheriff Glenn Palmer on January 26, 2016. Okay, well, I've watched that video dozens of times. I don't know how you can justify that shooting. I'm sorry if that offends you. I cannot find anywhere in there that you can find anything that justifies shooting him. He had his hands up. I mean, okay, you know, that was that big thing with in St. Louis. He had his hands up. Hands up, don't shoot. The only time his hand ever dropped was after he was shot.
That does not apply to white people.
Well, obviously, but you know, I don't care how you look at that. You cannot watch that video and find his hands anywhere other than up the entire time he's out that vehicle. He's going towards one guy, and there's a guy in front of him. He turns and goes to another direction. There's another guy coming at him from another direction. His hands are up, and then the shots are fired. Then his hand drops down to his side because he was already shot. He was trying to cover the wound.
And that's what they used as their justification. In the video that was released, I remember when I first saw it, I thought, well, you know, I think this is a justified shooting because, look, he reached down towards his waist, but the sound wasn't on that video. So all you see is a man reaching down, but you don't know what it's in response to. And the other thing is, I believe his firearm was in his other pocket. I think he reached down on his left side and the gun was on his right. This reminds me of that poor guy crawling down the highway or crawling down that hallway, and that criminal, and I mean the police officer who had "You're effed" engraved on his barrel of his AR, which apparently he could not wait to use, pretty much played a game of law enforcement, Simon Says, and when the guy finally had supposedly reached back, he executed him. And we see this all the time. Well, he reached for his gun. And I'm glad they're filing this suit. So I hope they're successful. Thank you.
Yep. So anyway, the suit likened it to what happened to a North Korean soldier who was shot while running across the border last November to South Korea, though he survived. Finnecrim was deliberately executed by a pre-planned government ambush after he had exited the vehicle with his hands up, which is what I just said. And you watch the video, watch it. You cannot say that he did anything but had his hands up. The video is conclusive on this. Absolutely conclusive. All right, let's see. Portland attorney Lisa Ludwig with Utah lawyer Jay Morgan Philpott filed the complaint in U.S. District Court in Pendleton on behalf of the Finnecrim family. It was entered into the court database on 12:03 a.m. Friday. The suit seeks more than $5 million in damages for Finnecrim's wife, Jeanette Finnecrim, and each of their 12 children and his estate. The complaint lists as defendants Brett Zing, former FBI special agent in charge in Portland, indicted FBI agent W. Joseph Esterita, Oregon Governor Kate Brown, U.S. Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat, Oregon, former U.S. Senator Harry Reid, Democrat, Nevada, Harney County Sheriff Dave Ward, Harney County Commissioner. Okay, there's a long list of people. They're suing everyone. Suzanne, that's pretty common, right? You file suit against everyone. Let the court sort out who has any culpability in this. Is that pretty safe to say?
Yeah, you pretty much want to cast a broad net.
Right. Okay. So this is pretty much typical how you would handle a lawsuit. It's nothing unusual here.
I prefer to see open rebellion over this issue, but that's just me.
Well, the problem is they have all the guns, they have all the tanks, they have all the aircraft, they have all the, they have all the machine guns. I always find it, okay, since you brought that up, I always find it interesting, all these people out here that are so gung-ho to say, well, if they did this, I'd pick up my gun and defend. Okay, you got 30 guys coming at you with a gun. You're by yourself. How's that going to work out for you? That's the whole issue here, is that they always come with overwhelming force. Ask Randy Weaver. Ask the people at down in Waco. What was it? Were they the Branch Davidians? I can't remember which one they were.
Right.
Ask them how it works out for you when you go up against this government. They come at you.
Yeah, and if you think this is tinfoil hat stuff, you can watch. I believe Netflix has a documentary about the Ruby Ridge incident, and Randy Weaver's daughter, who I believe was present, is interviewed there extensively, and you'll see how many lies the government told. This was a guy. This really rings. That hits home with me because, like him, I moved to the mountains in an attempt to be left alone. And it didn't take long for the government to start harassing me, wanting to know how my creek is faring behind my house, or sending me this American Community Survey questionnaire and making repeated demands that I fill that out. And one of the implied threats in there is after phone calls, repeated mailing requests, somebody will come to your home and assist you in filling out this very intrusive questionnaire, which federal statute requires you fill out truthfully. And I told myself I will draw my line in the sand. If it comes to me, I will not fill this out. And I hope somebody does not show up here to force me to do it.
Right. And, that's what I'm saying. The fact of the matter is, I mean, it's all big talk. I mean, heck, I've said it myself. I mean, really, when you think about it, though, when they come with that overwhelming force, there's not anything you're going to do by yourself. That is one of the big issues with that whole the Bundy Ranch thing, because they weren't alone. Actually, people came together to defy the government. And who backed down when met with force, with an equal force? Who backed down? The one that was in the wrong, the government. That's why, and Suzanne, in the prepper community, there really is this lone wolf thing. Am I wrong? I mean, I know it's less than it used to be. It's the whole idea is changing a bit. But it used to be in the prepper community, you were just a lone wolf. I mean, I got my stuff. I'm gonna go into my bunker and I'm fine. Heck with everyone else. Was that be true of maybe a decade or 20 years ago, where today it's kind of changing? There's a little bit shift away from that.
Well, I think what brought the prepping lifestyle to the forefront was a show called Doomsday Preppers. And unfortunately, as we know, the Nat Geo, Discovery, those formats are all run by leftists. And what they did was portray the preparedness community as a bunch of right-wing fanatics who don't trust the government, and made us look kind of silly for being prepared, because how dare we attempt to live in a lifestyle that does not make us dependent on the very same government that they embrace and want imposed upon us.
Right. And I think that's one of the Bundys. I think, really, they live out in the middle of nowhere. They ought to just be left alone. You moved to nowhere. I live out in the country. I do live in the East, so it's a little less, a little less than out there in the West, where you have a lot more space. But there's more people. I have more pigs that live near me than I do people.
That was me when I lived in California.
But I'm talking about literal pigs. I mean, actual food pigs.
Actually, we had the hogs out there that we couldn't shoot. The government could shoot them, but they let them run wild in a dangerous situation where I used to hunt. And then they said, well, even though this is kind of an interesting parallel, even though they are a non-indigenous and invasive species, they have become a part of our environment. And I'm wondering now, what are they talking about here? Are they talking about swine, or are they talking about certain human beings? What a parallel, huh? They're non-invasive, they're non-native and invasive, but we're going to welcome them anyway.
I'm talking literally over that shoulder. There's a big barn with probably 10,000 or 15,000 pigs in it. I mean, it's a pig factory. There's just a constant load of trucks going out of there. They're starter pigs. They raise them to about, maybe 60, 70 pounds. And they send them off to a place to fatten them up, and then they butcher them. But we have about 15,000 pigs right over my shoulder here. So
yes, unless anybody have a hissy fit, oh my God, did she just compare illegal aliens to pigs? No, I'm comparing the mindset. We have a certain creature that is non-native, that is invasive, and we're going to welcome it and protect it regardless. So let's clear that up, lest you get in trouble from me running my mouth on your show.
Well, thank you for clearing that up. All right. Well, I'm almost out of time. I hope that the Finicums win this. I'm glad we touched on it the other day. I'm glad the Bundys, I think you said with prejudice, they dismissed.
They dismissed it with prejudice, because
so they can't bring that back up again.
Yeah.
Okay. So great. So I'm glad the Bundys are out from under that. Have they released them? That's the next question. Did they release them from custody?
Yes, Cliven Bundy is home with his wife, and I believe the rest are as well. But Bill Keebler still remains in custody. All right.
And so there are consequences to defying them. They will ruin your life one way or the other. I'm sure that the Bundys are financially just about ruined trying to defend themselves from this government. All right.
It's
I'm
dangerous to be right
when
your government is wrong.
Yep. I have to reset the clocks because Suzanne, who's just now talking, is going to be up live in about 4 minutes with the Wasatch Report. I'm the Paradigm Shift. She's the Wasatch Report. Okay. Thank you for listening. I got to go, folks. This is the Cerberus Radio Network, defending liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.